Welcome to Girlfriends Bible Study, a live Bible study with Connie and friends. Each week, Connie and her girlfriends engage in a lively conversation as they read and study Scripture. So, grab a pen, your journal, and your best friend, and enjoy this enlightening Bible study.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bible Study Live with Connie and friends. And tonight, I am honored to have once again with us our special guest host, Bria Lacour. And we're continuing our February theme of forgiveness. And Bria will be bringing the Bible study message for us tonight. And I'm excited to know what she's got for us. So I will let Bria take it away. So welcome, Bria. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. Favorite Thursday night activity is Bible study with Connie and friends. Um, so, in thinking about this month's theme of forgiveness, I know we've also brought up a few times in that conversation unforgiveness. So, that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about. Not the most fun thing, but what really got me thinking about all this the past couple of weeks, and I know Connie said one night, like, these topics will come to you and then things start to happen. Like we have some moments real right in it, trying to forgive and, things like that were coming within this time frame, unironically. And I saw this video that where this woman, it was like a real, I won't disclose the person, but like they have a large following. And they basically said, hey, you don't have to forgive. Like, they're like, there are some things that you just can't forgive. And like a bunch of people underneath her post were like, yeah, you're right, and I was just like, what is going on? And like, like the unforgiveness is encouraged by the world and by society, but they're being impacted by it like just as much as we are as Christians, so I thought that would be interesting to explore and to think about and what happens, when we hold unforgiveness and things like that. And I think the best passage to read that goes along with this would be in Matthew chapter 18, where Jesus tells the parable of the unmerciful servant. So, Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 through 35, if you're following with me, that's where I'll start in verse 21. It says, then Peter came up and said to him, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold, with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt. But when the same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, pay what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me, and I will pay you. But he refused and went and put him in prison until he could pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, you wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me, and should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? And in his anger, his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all of his debt. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. And that's the word of the Lord, But basically, this story, it's like, okay, this man is forgiven all of this, but then when when the exact kind of the same opportunity presents itself to him that was presented to his master, he decided not to offer the same thing, which was grace, and forgiveness to that person. And what I thought was funny about or interesting about the woman being like, you don't have to forgive, like she felt like that was going to be freeing to people. And there are people in the comments acting like that was so freeing to know, like, okay, yes, there are certain circumstances you just cannot, and it's much better for me. What I thought was interesting is that actually, like, that the idea of withholding forgiveness in that circumstance, she made it seem, and society makes it seem like it's about this other person. That if I were to forgive them, then it's to say that what they did was right. It affirms them, it dishonors myself, all these things, whatever. But the focus is on this other person or these people or this other thing that did something to you. When I feel like observing unforgiveness, it's way more about you. It's actually about you. So that's kind of the lie and the twist there, in the world that makes you think like this is about them. And so if you were to forgive them, then that has something to do with that other person. But really, it has all to do with you. And unforgiveness is the root of bitterness, hatred, all things that we don't really want to carry and that we know feel like really heavy to carry, and not freeing at all. And sometimes you're dealing with that, and the person who hurt you is just living their life. A lot of times they don't even know what really like happened. Sometimes they don't even understand, or even if they do, they don't care, whatever it is. And here you are holding on to it, and this is not to shame anyone because I've done it too. Like, we just don't realize that the twist and the lie there is that, okay, I need to hold on to something to, I don't know, prove something about this person, to say that it wasn't okay, when all it does is, put you in your own prison, and it traps you. And it really is more about you than it is about the other person. And it hinders our relationship with other people, right? Like, it's hard to, be on good terms with others, but it also hinders our relationship with God. Like, if you're not able to understand what forgiveness really means and what unforgiveness really leads to in your life, I would think you would have a hard time feeling even forgiven by God yourself, and I think a lot of it is about justice and like what feels like, you want to get yours, eye for an eye or whatever else. But justice is ultimately God's, and people are held accountable by God, and we can trust in that. Like, we can know that. We can know that even if they never realize the gravity of what they've done, which I think is what you kind of talked about last week, like they may not know what they've done. And sometimes people do, to be honest. But sometimes people may not have realized that gravity. And yet you have to know and be okay with, and actually can celebrate, enjoy that God is the one who handles this. Like, just like you're being held accountable by him, they're being held accountable by him. And, we have a hope that says that one day God will make everything right. One day he'll wipe every tear from our eye, right? These kinds of things, like, we can look forward to that hope, but that's not just a long time from now, that's also right now. And we mentioned before in one of the other studies this month, I mentioned that, man, now I'm forgetting it. Oh, that God helps us to feel it. Because it's not really a feeling, it really is a choice that we make. And then we have to ask God to help us to walk that out. And so if that takes, like Jesus says, one time, 77 times, you have to continue to walk it out with God's help. You're not alone in that, I also saw a few interesting quotes, a couple by C.S. Lewis. One said, to be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven, excuse me, the inexcusable in you. So to be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. So we've already, mentioned before that, like, the person who forgives is forgiven much, loves much. Or in other words, you forgive because God first forgave you. And so you can extend what's been given to you to other people. But it requires, really understanding that and then being able to give that to other people. And so we know we have to have the right definition of that. And so I think kind of getting in our minds that this unforgiveness is less about this other person and us needing to make that right or, justify things. We have to know that God's way of forgiveness actually promotes justice, and holding on to unforgiveness does not, because it's actually freeing to know that I don't have to be the one to deal with this. I don't have to be the one to hold somebody accountable. But that's hard. It's topsy-turvy, and it's not what you hear, all the time. I saw another quote that says, by C.S. Lewis as well, everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have someone to forgive. Also true. It's really hard. But I don't know, Jesus, God helps us to do it, and I think it is a lovely thing. It is a beautiful thing. I quoted, those that have been forgiven much, love much. That's a story I think it's in Luke. You can find it. Maybe you can find it in multiple accounts, but I know I have here Luke 7. And there's the woman who pours all of her oil onto Jesus, and then she's wiping it with her hair, and everyone's like, what is going on? Why is she doing this? And they're judgmental, and they're like, I don't know why she's doing all this, But he says in Luke 47, therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. And he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Forgiveness allows us to love much. So the opposite is true. Unforgiveness hinders our ability to love others, and even our ability to love and serve God. It hinders that ability. And then we see in Ephesians chapter 4, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. So ultimately, I think we have to walk away and really resist this idea that one, unforgiveness and forgiveness is about, just this other person and getting, needing to control the narrative and enact justice, hold someone accountable, and remember that actually it's more about us. It actually is more about us. And when we don't forgive, we seed, bitterness and hatred in our hearts, and that hinders our relationship with God and others. It puts us in a prison of our own making, really. And the only person that can let you out is you at the end of the day. God's already extended forgiveness to you. All you have to do is take it, and then same with giving it to others. All you have to do is give it, but God will help you to do that. And I think a crucial, if you're looking for something practical or steps in this, I think it really is prayer. It really is bringing these people to God, bringing your true emotions and feelings to God, because he understands and because he gets it. And when you think about last week, how we talked about Jesus on the cross saying, forgive them for they know not what they do. That was that moment where he was talking to his father and telling him oh my goodness, what is going on? Yet still, God, forgive them, help me to forgive them. And so, getting in prayer, speaking with God about this person, about your emotions, about how you feel, and choosing to the act of forgiveness and saying it out loud, in your conversations with God as many times as you need to. And even saying the words I release this person, as many times as you need to. And knowing that God will help you to eventually feel the impact of that, and the freedom of that is, I think the key. So any thoughts? Anyone else?
Thank you so much, Bria. So when you were talking, a couple of thoughts occurred to me. First, I want to make sure I get the right Ephesians scripture. You said Ephesians 4 what?
32.
32. Okay. And then I've got Luke 7, 47 and 48, and Matthew 18, 21 through 35. Are those correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. making sure so I can put it on YouTube when I add it there. So a couple of things. One was years ago, and Gina, it's actually Gina's story, except it affects me. So I get to share it in the story, even though I wasn't there. There was a girl in our neighborhood who bullied us relentlessly. And then, we moved out of that neighborhood, and, we never saw her again, basically. But years and years and years later, Gina happened to see her in a store called Meyer in Michigan, and she was pulling her oxygen tank behind her. And I don't know what she was sick from. She was our age and maybe a year older, but right in our age group. And she recognized Gina immediately because Gina's face has not changed since she was 2. And so she saw Gina and knew who she was. And she started crying and asked for forgiveness and basically said, I know that I'm dealing with this health challenge, whatever it was, because of how I treated you and your sister. And she asked for Gina's forgiveness. And Gina immediately forgave in that moment because, I mean, whether that was true or not, whether it was the law of reaping and sowing, we don't know. But we certainly didn't want to, like you said, I don't want to be the one in charge of meting out judgment. Like, I'm so glad that's not my role. Like, that is not my job. And whether that was that or not, we certainly didn't want that to happen. I mean, we grew up. We're here. We're living. We're doing fine. And so, Gina called me afterwards, and just her sweetness about the way she handled it with the woman and all of that, and did her best to reassure her and let her know she was forgiven, just showed Gina's heart. And she spoke for both of us, knowing I would have felt the same way. I would have done the same thing. And so I was grateful for that. And then it also reminded me of a situation that I did deal with, where I was in college, and this one particular school year, this group tormented me. They intentionally tormented me. We had been friends, and then they got mad because I got elected president of the Black Caucus. And they wrote the names on my dorm room door. And I mean, they did all the stereotypical bully things. And one of the worst times was I was holding a meeting with the Black Caucus, and I always provided some refreshments. And they came running in like a pack and just snatched all the refreshments and ran out. And just looked like, and I mean, it was like, when they ran out, and I looked, and then I looked back at the room, and they're all looking like, what's she gonna say? What's she gonna do? And I just went on with the meeting. It's like, so the next thing on the agenda is, and we got through everything. And apparently after that, they went to some of the people in the meeting and said, what did she do? What'd she do when we grabbed all the stuff? And they said, she didn't do anything. She didn't say anything. Like, they were waiting for me to react and to, that son of a biscuit eater, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't go there. So the next year, my next college year, I happened to see one of the guys. It was just before college had begun, and I'm walking down the street, and he comes toward me, and I'm like, now what? And he stopped me, and he burst into tears, and he said, I want to apologize for how we treated you last year. There was no reason for that. I can't believe what we did, and we were so cruel, and you never said anything. You never did anything. You never responded in kind. You didn't even talk about us. And which he, that whole, heat burning coals on their head scripture of, when you're kind to your enemy, like, be kind to those who persecute you, like, which I know it seems, like you said, counterintuitive. It feels like it's not going to work to show them the error of their ways, but it doesn't work like that. All that does is give more fuel to their fire. And by not doing that, it took all the fuel away. And of course, I forgave him as he stood in front of me and cried. And I said, of course, I forgive you. Like, I didn't know what are you going to do? I forgive you. He was tormented. He was tormented by that. And that made me really sad. Like, you spent your whole summer thinking about all of this. And the other woman spent years, like, the fact that she got sick and thought it was because of us, and we were way grown at that time. Like, I don't know if I had a child, but Gina had 2. Like, we were way grown at that time. I don't think my baby had been born yet. I don't think so, but it was close. So that means it was 30 year, 20 year, 25 year, like, it was years of what she must have beaten herself up for. And it made me so sad. So anyway, so those were the first two things I thought of were real-time examples. The other thing I thought about was when, the parable of the unmerciful servant, and how, it says he was sent to prison after he was so unkind and so unforgiving, and it said tortured in my book. It actually says tortured. But I thought about that, like, just what if that moment that we chose not to forgive, God was like, okay, I'm gonna take a little piece of flesh for every time you did something. Then, I mean, we would be, first of all, we'd likely be gone. Like, we'd have no flesh left. But imagine if in that moment we're like, oh, I'm not forgiving him because he was way wrong and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, really? Because forgiveness you don't get a choice on that. So if you don't forgive, even in this instance, all the times I forgave you, come here a second. I'm gonna take my pound of flesh, or even my centimeter of flesh, for every time you did something and I forgave you. Can you imagine? We'd be dead. We'd be dead because we'd have no flesh left. And so, it occurred to me, what if that happened? What if the moment like that woman posted, the moment we decide we're going to go public with, we don't have to forgive. What if God was like, really? That's what that feels like. Like, imagine. Thank God it's not my job to mete out justice and judgment. I'm not doing it. It's not my job. But I tell you what you said also, Bria, about speaking it out in terms of that forgiveness. I was doing that today. I was saying out loud, Lord, I forgive this person. Help my heart heal, and help my heart forgive. I am acknowledging that this person needs my forgiveness. Like, I need to let this go and forgive this person. And, and because part of me right in that moment, here's what had happened. I was like, oh, they're talking about the worst relationships you ever had and all of that. And so I was like, oh, I'm a post about, what this guy did and why we stopped being friends. And God was like, what is the theme of this month? And I was like, oh, set that down. Okay. Sorry, my bad. I mean, literally called me on the carpet I had phone in hand, was ready to go. It's like, really? Really? 10 minutes. He's just gone. Anyway, I didn't do it, obviously. So thank the Lord. But then I was like, Lord, please help my heart. Just forgive. I don't want to think about it, I don't want to think about posting about it. Just, Lord, please, please, I forgive. Please help my heart to feel the forgiveness in Jesus' name. So anyway, those are the things that came to me as you were talking today. So thank you for that. And oh boy, God does not play.
He does. Something you were saying, I was like, now I need to go look this up after. Like, what are the physical effects of unforgiveness? I'm sure, I mean, I've been sick, like even when I was like younger and I would just do something and I like lied to my mom, I was sick, like just like holding on to something and just not. So I'm curious. I'm sure someone's done studies on that. So while, the person that you guys forgave, what, like you said, like it may not be one to one, but like there are results of the stress and the, all of that that comes from those things that can show up in your body, can show up in other ways. And when you were talking, I also was reminded of like, I remember one time this guy messaged me on Facebook and was like, hey, I just want to let you know, it's a long thing. He was like, I'm really sorry for what I did, blah, 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 wasn't right. It was like years ago or something. And I was like, what did you do? I said, what? What did you do? Lord, help me. And I think I was already following God at that time. And it was like, well, I guess I forgave him enough that it's gone now. Like, like, yeah. And I know that this whole conversation, like even on that Instagram post I saw, a lot of the people were hurting in the comments. They were like, there are really horrible things that happened to them, and so they feel like, how am I excusing that? But I don't think God, like, obviously, because he is the one who holds the judgment, he is the one who holds us accountable. It doesn't go without judgment, without something happening, Like we don't know how it's going to show up in that person's life or what's going to happen. It's between them and God. You know what I mean? And I know that's really difficult for people. And we talked about that too, like just these moments where we saw acts of violence and then people forgave, and like how people thought they were crazy for doing things like that, and that whole discussion. But I remember just thinking like, I don't remember what this guy did, but I kind of did. And I was like, it's so interesting how I just didn't really feel anything anymore. And it was I remember it was a painful thing, but I just was not feeling it anymore. I guess because God really, really helped me. And, but that had been like obviously on his heart for years. It was like, that was like something in high school. We were like you said, way past that, So it's interesting.
I have my God urn. Gina knows about this, but I have my God urn. And when I'm struggling to let something go, whether it's to forgive someone or to let go of a hurt, even if it's not that I necessarily need to forgive them, but maybe there's just something that I'm worried about. Like, I can't sleep. I can't think. It just keeps swirling around. I write it on a piece of paper and I fold it up and I put it in my God urn. And the thing is, the physical act of putting it in, and you cannot take it out. Like it just stays in there. And it's there's something physical. And I heard a pastor talk about this years and years ago. So I tried it, and it works. When you give it to God and you don't take it back, it has a really amazing, miraculous effect. And so what I normally do is way later, like years later, I'll, dump the stuff from the urn and say, okay, what did I put in there? There are things I'm like, what am I talking about? Like this situation, who was person's name? Like there are people I don't know on there. There are situations going on with somebody that I can, like you said, like what he's apologizing. I don't even, and thinking this plagued me to the point that I had to write it down and put it in the God urn, and it is gone. So, I strongly encourage people to have their own, whatever that is, that they can put those things in and let it go, because it really does help. So, sister.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We do. Is there
Okay.
anything you want to share?
Yeah. So I was looking for the quote. I couldn't remember what it was. The quote that unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I mean, I do understand the feeling of I have to hold on to this anger. I have to hold on to this judgment because what was done was so egregious, and I get it. But the reality is, like you said, most of the time that other person is living their lives. They don't know. If they're good people, they may not have known what they did. If they're bad people, they don't care what they did. And then there are people like our friend Lisa, who was carrying that and devastated. And I had an issue with the first church that I belonged to, one of the pastors there, and he allowed one of the groups to become very hateful and harsh, and he kind of joined in on it, and we ended up leaving that church. And before we did, we made it known why. This was the behavior that was very painful for us. We were the children's ministers and blah blah blah, and years later, because we went back to the church for something. It was Paul's church he was raised in, and he had retired, but he was at the event, and this pastor was there, and he was sitting and just looked devastated. He just looked dejected, and I didn't know. I don't hold on to things very well, negative things very well like that. So I couldn't even tell you what exactly they had done. I remember there was some ugliness, and it resulted in us leaving the church. And somebody told me, yeah, you see Pastor so-and-so again. They were like, yeah, he was really nervous to come here because you're here. And I was like, because I'm here? And he's never really forgiven himself for how that went. And he feels like, you must hate him and you're justified in hating him. And like I said, I was like you, Bria. I was like, what did he do? I can't remember. I remember there was a thing, but I don't remember. Because we left, right? If we hadn't left, I probably wouldn't even remember there was a thing. And so they said, yeah, he's really struggled with it through the years. He really didn't want to come today because he just felt that you had reason to hate him. And, and I just was like, so I walked over to him and he saw me come and I could see his eyes like, he was stressed. And I just bent over and kissed him on the cheek, gave him a little hug. And how you doing? He was just like, I'm good. I was like, oh, it's good. Good to see you. I hope everything is okay with you. And kept on walking. His wife came over to me in tears. Thank you so much. You don't know what a burden this has been to him, how heavy this burden has been, how much he's carried the guilt for that. I was just like, people mess up, right? And I know I've messed up, and I'm sure there's somebody walking around thinking, I will never forgive her. No, I probably don't know what it was, right? I stepped on their thing and, kicked their puppy, and I don't know. And so, what you're saying is just so, on the one hand, God will deal with people. On the other hand, we don't know how God deals with their heart. We don't know if he puts it on their heart right away. We don't know if they're walking around suffering. But it's not for us, like you said, Bria, that's not for us to determine. It's not for us it's not up to us to extract justice. Like, it's just not, it's up to God. And when we are in a position, like the parable that you read, when we're in a position to dispense forgiveness, I hope we always choose to. It doesn't cost us anything, and it might. If you really are hold on to it, you might feel it, but boy, it'll free you up later. I mean, it'll free you up, especially if the person is hurting like that. Looking for forgiveness and not thinking they'd get it, or anyway. Yeah, the few times in my life, your words have really hit true, because the times in my life that has happened where someone has felt bad, and I wonder when a thought, when you ever have one of those thoughts of like a memory of somebody who did you wrong, and it'll come up and you'll be like, I remember that was wrong. That was all kinds of wrong. And I always wonder, I wonder if they're carrying it around like that pastor was, though, or like that might, I can't be mad because I don't know if they're suffering for it way more than I am. It just bubbles up like a thought every now and then. For me, they might really be carrying this around in a way that they can't resolve it because they can't find me, or they don't, they don't think I'd forgive or what. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, that was wrong. I'm gonna let it go though. I have a much harder time letting go of the things that I think I might have done to someone. Much harder to turn that forgiveness around and forgive yourself, because I expect better.
Right. But you know what, Gina? First of all, what you said, I needed to hear that. First of all, let me first say, I really needed to hear that, because that also helps me, whether it's true or not, it helps me with forgiveness for those people. If I imagine that they're walking around tormented because I have not, or they think that I have not forgiven them, and they know what they did, and they're feeling guilty, and they're, wondering if this pain or that disease is caused by whatever they did, that it also helps me, even if I meet them and if I see them and they're like, whatever, I can still feel it, because I know at some point they'll still get there. So it's Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But that helps me just in the moment of those people where I'm struggling a little bit to let that last little dredge piece go. If I think about the fact that, what if they're tormented because I haven't, or because they think I haven't? So number one. But number two, the one thing, and it's not easy. I actually had this conversation on a prayer call yesterday. The thing about the choices that we made, the mistakes we made, the bad decisions we made, and holding on to that, and the guilt from that, oh, I screwed that up, or I said that wrong thing, or I hurt that person, I saw them cry, I know that, or whatever it is. One of the things that helps me, and I didn't even think about this yesterday when I was on the prayer call, but I will say, in scripture, one of the things that helps me is when you read about, for instance, Saul, whose name changed to Paul, and how he was out there persecuting Christians and giving the orders for whatever. And when he had his epiphany, he didn't just leave himself in that place of torment, like, oh my God, I need to go back and ask for forgiveness for everybody, every family. He was like, you know what? It was like the adulterous woman, go and sin no more. I need to just go forward and do the best I can do going forward. And to me, as hard as it is, there are times when I have to recognize, and I posted about it earlier this week because I was being tormented by, did my choices then and bad decisions then affect people in my life now? And how can I fix it? Or I wish I could go back and undo. Well, I can't. I can't go back and undo. So all I can do is, going forward, how can I be a better person, make better choices, do the right thing, help the people that maybe I hurt by making the choices I made before, whatever God's telling me to do as it relates to that. I can only go forward. And that's about anything. I mean, that's not just the mistakes I made, but that's about anything in our past. Like, we can decide, oh, I'm going to be a victim of my past because I was beaten up and I was bullied and I was molested and I was, abused, and I'm just going to wallow in that and be in that because that's what. Or we can say, you know what, that happened. I'm not going there. I'm going to create an anti-bullying project. Like, you can decide whether or not you want to stay in and wallow and stay in the muck. Or you can say, you know what, that sucked. How can I use that experience to make me a better person, or to make sure that nobody else goes through what I went through? I want to make a different choice. I want to make a different choice. And so, but in terms of Gina, if I had been Saul Paul, and I knew that because of me, people had literally died, like they were so I think I'd have been like, I can't move forward. I want to take my life. Like, I think, I could see feeling that way. And yet, look at the New Testament. He's like, no, I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna do better. I gotta do something different. It's not easy, but it's the only example I have when I'm feeling the regret for my choices. Okay,
Yeah.
you can sit there with regret,
Yeah.
or you can do something else.
Yeah. And unforgiveness of others can, stop you cold. Just an unforgiveness of yourself can stop you cold as well.
Yes, you helped me through that whole situation that occurred. And I just felt like, I don't think God will ever forgive me. And you said, this is not about God forgiving you. This is about you forgiving you. God's already done it. Otherwise you'd be gone. Like, if he had no more use for you, or that one, I love that quote of, you think you screwed everything up so that God's purpose can't be fulfilled. You, my friend, are not that powerful. Like, it's like, I love that. I am not that powerful. And you were like, yeah, you can't mess God's plan up. That you cannot. Now, you're having an issue with self-forgiveness. This is not about whether or not God has forgiven you. You've repented, you've done the things that you need to do with God. Now you got to work on you. And it was you. I was talking to you. I had driven somewhere and I was sitting in the middle of some place. I just remember it was in Pasadena, some back road in Pasadena, sobbing, talking to you on the phone. And you were like, this isn't about you and God. This is about you. This is about you forgiving yourself. And that's all it is. God's forgiven you. You need to forgive yourself. And it was what I needed. And I'm so thankful. It's not
that's
easy.
even a whole other topic, forgiving self, and because there's an interesting line there, and I think that the woman who posted that reel, like a lot of what she was talking about is like just trying to give people permission not to say, not to affirm whatever happened to them was like okay and things like that. And it was very like, while she made it seem like it was very self-centered, like you need to think about you need to, you and yours and all that. It was still centered on the other person. Like, that's what's was so sad to me, is I'm like, all these people are commenting on this and they're like, yeah, you're right, girl, you're right. And I'm like, the opposite of what y'all think is happening. It's not your fault. But and then self-forgiveness is a whole other thing, because yeah, that's just like its own topic too, because you're right. It's like well, God's already done it. This is not even really between you and him. I mean, you could ask for his help to like forgive yourself, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I had to do. That's exactly what I had to do, is ask, help me forgive myself. Because right now, like Gina said, I expected better. I expected more from myself.
When
How
you
did I
thought you knew better, you're like, I thought I knew better than that. Yeah, it can damage you when you do something that's out of what you perceive yourself to be.
Right.
It can be very damaging. But this was really helpful, Bria. This was a great word, and um, it was very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Reminded,
mean,
reminded me of some things.
always timely, like
Always.
I
What's the
feel like
title of tonight's message, Bria?
I have the prison of unforgiveness.
The prison?
Of unforgiveness.
And that's
Ciao.
exactly what
Okay.
it is. That's exactly what it is. We didn't touch on the difference between forgiving somebody and not putting yourself in a position where someone can hurt you again. And it sounds like maybe that's a little bit about what girlfriend was trying to get to, but it doesn't sound like she was taking the right road to get there. She was.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, those boundaries, like all of that is necessary, still and all of that. But yeah,
Right, protect
I
yourself,
think
but that's not the
mhm.
same as not forgiving.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see. It's like, wow, thousands of people also agreed. All right, we have a lot of work to do in
Oh,
the world.
we're definitely in an unforgiving phase. People coming for people for any tiny little perceived slight, and social media is perfect for that. So, yeah, we are definitely in a place where forgiveness is the last thing people are. Did they equate it with weakness or letting somebody get away with something?
Mhm.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for the message. Thank you so much. And thank you, Facebook, for tuning in. And this will be posted on YouTube by tomorrow, probably later tonight, but by tomorrow for sure. So thank you so much, Bria. Thank you for leading tonight, and such a good message. I needed to hear it. I really needed to hear it. So anyway, we'll see you next week, Facebook. Have a good night.